Suits the Business RPG is a 2016 RPG developed by Technomancy Studios and made in RPG Maker VX Ace. The later version was made in RPG Maker MV. It is quite a unique and quality game, and I'll review it right now, I guess. The game follows a man named The Guy who awakens in a business school. After a quick tutorial, all his classmates are incinerated and he graduates. The game doesn't really have much of a central plot after this. The first half of the game is mostly doing odd jobs for various higher-up businessmen, while the second half involves the guy attempting to overthrow the corrupt government with the help of a man named the Leader. Very creative names here. Aside from these loose threads, most of the game is made up of isolated, often humorous, bizarre vignettes. You can also recruit two optional party members, Jerome and Meat Kid. Oddly, despite being invaluable, especially Jerome, both characters are missable and cryptic to find. It's almost like the game doesn't want you to recruit them. Unfortunately, they don't get any development. Their only dialogue is when you recruit them. The guy also has no personalities, he does not speak. Really, none of the characters in the game are developed at all, but in a game like this, mostly focused on being comedic, it's not that big of a deal. The majority of the comedy comes from either absurdist humor or very bleak commentary on capitalism, as the world of the game is a consumerist hellscape. The game's commentary is unsurprisingly not that deep, but it's still usually fairly entertaining. The amount that comedy will land for you definitely varies, though. I personally think the game is hilarious, but I've read several people who think it's aggressively unfunny. So be forewarned of that, especially since, as I will soon get into, the game's best aspect is by far the comedy and story. The combat, unfortunately, kind of blows. It's a basic turn-based RPG, but with the added element of being really boring. Even though the battles are easy, they can drag on with little strategy. The two first characters you'll receive only have either generic special attacks that just deal damage, or staple skills that pin an enemy down for a few turns. This is helpful, but I can't say it's terribly interesting or fun to use. Meat Kid, the last party member you get, has more interesting abilities, but his stats are too low to be useful. Enemies aren't much better, as most just deal generic damage or use basic status effects. The combat overall is just unfun. It's not as bad as some RPGs, cough cough Omori, but it's still tedious. Some of the later game bosses especially are very annoying. One in the final dungeon spams defense raising skills on itself so much that it's nearly impossible to damage. Not fun. One aspect I enjoy about the combat, though, is the pay-to-win skill the guy has. It costs money, quite a bit in fact, but if you pay, all the enemies die instantly. It is quite funny commentary and also legitimately a clever skill idea. It even works in the final boss for some godforsaken reason. Apart from the combat, which doesn't take up nearly as much of the game as it may have sounded like it does, the gameplay is quite a bit better. Most of it is just wandering around fairly open areas and finding optional content and secrets along with progressing the plot. And believe me when I say there was a lot of optional content. I would say it's one of the best parts of the game, it's just wandering around will lead to an ungodly amount of fun stuff to find. So anyways, the game mostly consists of wandering around and fighting. I can't say it's too engaging, but it is reasonably enjoyable at least. The art is an aspect of the game that I'm fairly mixed on. On the good side, the battle sprites and some detailed overworld sprites have a sketchy, bizarre style that's both charming and funny. However, on the worst side, many of the common overworld sprites are dull and polygonal. These are mostly used for common NPCs and objects. I personally think that they look very ugly and lack the charm of the more fun overworld sprites. It's not a huge deal, but they could have been done better. Besides that, though, I quite like the art. The music is also pretty good. It's obviously amateur, which I'd usually criticize, but I feel it fits with the aesthetic of the game, and if anything, contributes to it. There are also several quite good songs off the soundtrack, like Broom, which you're hearing right now, Pain Station, and Kingdom Commerce. Good names. Unfortunately, it's out on streaming services, but if it was, it'd be pretty cool. Anyways, in conclusion, Suits a Business RPG is a pretty good RPG. It has its flaws, boring combat and some ugly art, but for me, the good outweighs the bad. If quality gameplay is important to you, you'll probably skip this one, but if you're into absurdist comedy, then definitely give it a try. It's only $1 on Steam, so you won't be losing too much if you do.